All right, welcome back to the Hunter's Quest podcast. This is your host, Hunter McWaters. It's great to be with you guys. And today I have an episode with a guy named Gregg Sloan from BARNES Bullets. Now, you may not have heard of Gregg, but I just recently started working with BARNES. Actually, I shot BARNES Bullets all during the season 1 filming, which is going to be launching soon, as I've stated before, on Sportsman Channel. But I shot BARNES Bullets all year, not because I was working with them or sponsored by them or anything like that, just because I wanted some quality ammunition and I wanted to shoot a copper mono bullet. And so I landed on BARNES. My gun shot their ammunition very well, and I had excellent success with their bullets, both in 300 Win Mag and 6.5 Creedmoor this year. I was able to take, I think, 2 antelope, 2 mule deer, and a Coues deer, and a coyote. And every single one of those animals, except for one, dropped in its tracks, didn't move at all. And the one that did move, it was about a 450-yard shot, and it ran about 10 feet and died. So I'm also looking forward to getting them out here on my bear hunt, which I'm about to leave for. As this is coming out, I will probably be in the backcountry on my bear hunt. Things are kind of crazy right now. I'm getting everything packed and ready to go. But so if you're listening to this and it's between May 14th and May 24th, go ahead and send up a prayer for me that we have success on our bear hunt, but it's going to be fun either way. But in this episode, we talk a little bit about ballistics, a little bit about BARNES and kind of the history of the company and what Gregg does there. He's a ballistics engineer or technician. Now he's kind of a manager, but that's where he started at BARNES. And another kind of main theme of this podcast is muzzleloading, because as you may or may not have heard or whatever, I did draw a really good muzzleloader elk tag in New Mexico. It was a very small chance of drawing that, but I was blessed and drew that tag. So I've kind of been doing a muzzleloading deep dive. And so I wanted to get Gregg on, talk about ballistics, talk about load development for a muzzleloader, bullet choice, and all that good stuff. So if you're into ballistics or muzzleloading especially, you'll really like this episode. So as always, please share with your friends, please subscribe, please leave me a rating, a review on Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All that stuff is super helpful as I continue to grow. And again, be on the lookout for the launch of the Hunter's Quest TV show, which is going to be starting the last week of June. And we have 4 airings per week, but the easiest one to catch probably will be Saturday at noon. So that'd be noon Eastern time. So definitely check out the show, and I appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next one. All right, guys, welcome to the Hunter's Quest podcast. This is your host, Hunter McWaters, and I'm joined today by Gregg Sloan from BARNES Bullets. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, man. So you are I know you're in Utah. Where in Utah are you guys?
BARNES is located in Mona, Utah. It's
Okay.
kind of central, kind of right in the middle of the state, more or less.
Okay. Is that where you are based as well, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I live just south of here, just kind of little town called Fountain Green. So just up the canyon,
Okay.
at about 6,000 feet. So pretty
Nice.
fortunate to live in a cool place, just a small rural area. You know, not a lot of people around, so get to go up and play in the mountains and
Yeah.
hunt and do all the fun outdoor stuff that we all enjoy. So.
Yeah, man. So are you guys still pretty buried in snow out there, or how's that situation?
It's been a crazy winter, which is great. We've needed it, but yeah, it's finally turning into spring. So now it's all about the fear and issues of flooding and all that snow melt coming down and
Yeah.
rivers overflowing. And snow's finally gone at my house in the last couple of weeks, but now it's
Okay.
still up on the mountains for sure. We still got a ton of snow up high, but that's all. It's getting pretty warm the last couple of days. We've had some warmer days this week and hitting even 80 degrees. So it's coming down fast.
Nice, man. So you say you needed it. Is that because of it was dry, or why do you say that?
Yeah. Yeah. We've been in a drought. It's been pretty severe for a while. And so we've actually had record snow year for snowpack and water content, which is great. All the way back to as long as they've been recording it, in current methods at least.
Yeah.
So really good snow year, which Utah totally relies on the snowpack for all of its water.
Okay.
And obviously it affects the wildlife, as well as the population here. And
Yeah.
a lot of these small towns are based off of springs or flow from the snowpack coming down off the mountains. So
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's like all this, doom and gloom going around right now about winter kill and all this stuff like that. But, like you said, I think a lot of the West needed that moisture. And while it may have done some damage, I think probably in the long term, it might be a good thing. What do you think?
yeah, for sure. No, I agree. I mean, the areas I hunt myself, they're on the drier side, kind of more south central southern Utah, and it's definitely a drier climate than some of the northern mountains. And
Yeah.
any snow we can get definitely makes a big difference. The deer and elk, and obviously it's a balance. For sure, winter kill is definitely a concern. Depending on the area, the winter range, and their access, depending on the major interstates and how that affects migration and all that. But I'm
Yeah.
positive. I'm looking forward to this year. I think it's going to be a good year. Some good, as far as nutrition for them and what
Yeah.
it's going to look like.
Sweet. So tell me a little about yourself, man. Like you born and raised out there, you got a family, just tell me a little about yourself, man.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm Utah born. Pretty much lived most of my life here. Um, I've traveled around a little bit and spent a little bit of time growing up in a few different places, but more or less born and raised in Utah.
Okay.
I love it here. Grew up hunting, outdoors, shooting, guns. Pretty much been obsessed since I was as young as could remember.
Yeah.
And I've always loved ballistics. I've always loved kind of the custom rifles, accuracy, precision, got into long range stuff. Um, and, I can remember as a young, probably young teenager, even before I hand loaded, my family, we always hunted. I had dad, grandpa, uncles, everyone hunted in my family. Something we did. We deer hunted, we did waterfowl, upland game, elk hunting.
Mm-hmm.
But we all just shot factory ammo. That's, nobody in my family did any hand loading or reloading. But it's something that always interested me, just different cartridges. 10, 11, 12 years old, I would read whatever I could. Reloading manuals, gun
Wow.
magazines. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's kind of how I got my start and
Most
my
kids are watching
passion.
cartoons and you're reading reloading ballistics manuals and stuff.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. I actually joke about it because kind of my first interaction with Barnes. I was probably around 12 years old. I actually went and bought a reloading manual. It was actually the number 3 manual, and read it cover to cover. And that's before I ever reloaded. So
Wow.
little did I know at the time, that's kind of where I'd build my career. So I started out fairly young here in the ballistics lab as a lab tech. Um, and I'll be 16 years here this fall. So
Wow.
kind of, I'm married. I have 4 kids,
Okay.
from the ages of soon to be 8 to 14 years old. And
Okay.
so they keep us busy. We love, camping, hunting, riding dirt bikes side by side,
Yeah.
shooting, all that. So it's been great. I've been able to have a good life, build my career here, and raise
Yeah.
my family in a small town, just 15, 20 minutes away from work, and we love it.
Yeah. Like I told my son about. I drove from basically the Mexico border up to Salt Lake this year because I was hunting down there. Then I was going to the expo, and so I had spent a little time in Utah, but that was the most I'd really seen a lot of Utah, and
Mhm.
it's such a cool state. Like just the geological formations and like everything is like so cool. So I was telling my son about it. I was like, yeah, I saw some like there's like bright red and bright orange mountains, and like you'll drive by there's like greenish blue mountains. Like literally the rocks are greenish blue, and so now like he's obsessed. He's like, Dad, I want to go to Utah, and so so he's like obsessed with Utah for some reason. But have you gotten your kids out hunting yet? I'm assuming.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. My oldest, I have 2 boys and 2 girls, so my oldest 2 boys are kind of that age. I actually in Utah you have to be 12 to hunt
Okay.
big game, anyways. And so they've done some waterfowl, some turkey, and some upland game. But actually, in when my oldest was 10 years old, Arizona does some youth tags, like some doe tags on the Kaibab. We went down and
Ooh,
hunted when he was 10 and shot a doe mule deer. That was kind of
nice.
fun. Um, so where I'm a gun nut, so it's all about, you know, I got to build a rifle for this occasion and what's the best cartridge and configuration, barrel length, weight, what
Yeah.
scope, all that. So he actually used a little custom 6mm Creedmoor that I'd put together, 18-inch barrel with a suppressor, with a 95 grain LRX.
Okay.
Did awesome. That's kind of been his go-to. Last year we went up to Wyoming hunting antelope with my oldest boy and my wife and my
That's such a
dad.
fun hunt.
Yeah, we all drew tags and went up and had a good time. And so we love it. It's a family thing for us for sure.
Yeah.
They tag along on somebody draws a good tag, and or whether it's just what we have and what we call general season deer, kind of the normal go hunt every year type thing. So
Yeah. So you said you do a lot of custom stuff, and being like a ballistics expert, I guess, you're probably not shooting any like rifles from a factory. I'm assuming like pretty much everything you shoot is like you built it, right? Or not?
yeah, a little bit of both. I mean, for sure. A lot of the guys here in the lab and at Barnes in general, there's a ton of hunters and gun nuts. And so everything from just factory guns to stuff we've pieced together or semi-custom or full custom jobs. I'm more of a bolt action guy, because it's more hunting based for me, and that's what
Yeah.
I like to hunt with out here. So a lot of stuff just built on like Remington 700 actions with aftermarket barrels and different stocks and triggers that we choose. And
Cool.
you kind of can't leave anything alone either. Unfortunately, you think you'd be smart, you'd have everything ready to go. This is what you do for a living, but it's kind of like there's always something new to try, some
Oh
new
yeah.
cartridge, some new bullet. We're say we develop a new bullet, it's got to be, well, I got to go build a gun now to go shoot that bullet, that kind of thing. And work with this new cartridge, so it's fun. So yeah, a lot of projects that way.
Yeah.
Tinkering with different load workup and
All right,
trying to
so I
get the
gotta
best.
ask, what, in your opinion, what are some of the best factory rifles out there?
Over the years, I've shot a ton of them. Obviously, working in the lab, we use a lot. We have everybody's rifles, right? We don't just have one make. We use a lot what we call F&C guns when we're doing our ammunition testing, and so we want to have a good variety. And we also do a lot of, there's been a ton of development projects over the years, so we get a lot of good feel for what's out there.
Hmm.
It's improved a lot. There's a lot of good options out there. Over the years, Savage has been good, a good go-to. They usually shoot really good.
Hmm.
Um, Browning's been doing a ton of cool stuff the last few years. I think they're really paying attention with, what the end user wants. They're looking at, faster twist rates and looking at different configurations, even with standard, you know, run of the mill cartridges, but they do 1 in 8 twist 300 Win Mag, for example,
Hmm.
which you team it with like one of our 208 grain LRX bullets that requires that faster twist. And, you don't have to have the new 300 PRC to shoot that. You can still stick with the Win Mag, but go with an 8 twist. And so there's some cool stuff there. They're
Yeah.
shooting really good. Weatherby rifles have always been great, in my experience. I know Tikas have done well.
Hmm.
For me personally, a lot of my stuff's not everything, but a lot of it's just a Remington 700 action with say like a custom barrel. I've done a lot of the proof carbon stuff lately, or, you know, Schillen barrels have been great for me, whatever. But yeah, factory rifle wise, there's a lot of good options out there.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, you mentioned the carbon barrel, and this is probably like a very novice type question, but I can only be expert in so many things. I'm just kidding. I'm not really an expert in anything. I'm sort of just like a jack of all trades. But um, what is, just this kind of random question, but what is the point? I'm assuming obviously weight retention and faster cooling, I'm assuming would be your main reasons for going to the carbon barrel. Is that what are the reasons that you might go with a carbon barrel?
yeah, that's a lot of it. I mean, for me, it's kind of like I like the benefits of a larger diameter barrel. They don't heat up as quick. They're stiffer. I like it for an accuracy perspective. And so obviously we hunt out west where a lot of packing it on your back, hiking up a ridge, I'll hunt anywhere from 5,000 to, 11,000 foot elevation. And so packing a heavy 15-pound rifle around, it just doesn't cut it.
Yeah.
And so you go to a super lightweight mountain rifle with a pencil thin barrel, and they can shoot really accurate. But generally, if you spend any time with a super lightweight gun, you're lucky to get a 3-shot group in without that heat
Yeah.
starting to play a factor in it. And
Hmm.
so that's been my thing, is just the benefits of a bull barrel with the weight savings.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I've gone to. You can definitely build, you can honestly build a lighter gun with a steel barrel. But again, just in my experience, the really thin contours to have a super lightweight rifle, it just, I don't want
Yeah.
to put up with the variables that get thrown into it for,
Yeah.
flyers and shots starting to get thrown out because of heat playing a role. So
For sure, man. Okay, so you're into ballistics as a child, and then you said what? How old are you? Started at Barnes?
yeah, I was 22 years old when I started at Barnes.
Okay.
I got married in the late spring, early summer, and that fall, that November. So I'd only been married a few months and started at Barnes as a entry level ballistic lab technician. So
Okay, and did you go to school for this stuff, or you just went straight into work?
kind of more straight into work. I did do some gunsmithing work, and like I said, it's more of just a background of more of a hobby, just enthusiast, gun
Yeah.
nut, ballistic, just reading and researching whatever I could on my own. I actually came from a construction background of
Okay.
all things, so I my that's kind of what my brothers did, and at the time, I was working with them, and I'd done framing, finished carpentry, so a little bit of concrete, and uh,
Yeah.
when I was married, I actually started installing garage doors. As cool as that
Okay.
sounds, it was like I don't want to do this the rest of my life, and I was still young and newlywed, and it was like I got to make a big change. I'm either going to have to go, find something I can enjoy, or
Yeah.
go to school and get a degree in something that's going to work out better for me. And
That's
Barnes was a Utah company, and I happened to see a job posting, and
okay.
it worked out. So I've been able to kind of grow with the company. When I started almost 16 years ago, we were definitely a lot smaller company. We were at a different facility. We've grown and changed a lot. I've been through a lot of change that way, but it's been huge for me, personally, and my family, to be able to, it's pretty much all been on the job, and it's definitely more of an engineering background what we get into.
Yeah.
Working with the ballistic side and product development and kind of the engineering practices that go into, design, and there's a lot of diagnostic problem solving on a
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day basis. And then I got over the years got into what we call kind of the special projects tech side. Um, had a lot of good mentors and was able to learn a lot on the job, and it's kind of worked out, and opportunities came up with the management piece. And so I got into managing the ballistics lab. It's probably been, oh, probably 8 or 9 years ago when I took over that role. And then the last couple of years started overseeing the R&D department as well. So
Okay. So what does a ballistics technician do? Like what's that work like?
yeah, it's kind of a interesting job. It's definitely unique. It's not something you can necessarily go to school for, or have any outside experience other than understanding basic ballistic theories. Um, you know, Obviously you got to understand guns and bullets and ammunition and their interaction. We have a lab and a range here at our facility, indoor range, everything from a water tank where we function test the bullets. We have a 25-yard, 100-yard, and 300-yard indoor range, all outfitted with ballistic instrumentation, infrared sky screens, chronographs, acoustic targeting, all
Wow.
the pressure and velocity test equipment, soft catch bullet traps. We do ballistics gel. So a lab tech's job day to day, kind of the main core is supporting production testing. So as we're manufacturing bullets on the presses, and as we are loading ammunition on the ammo loaders, uh, we have to ensure that our settings are correct, our tooling is correct. On the bullet side, there's a lot that goes into building a copper bullet from a tooling perspective. And so as they set up for a specific run of bullets, given caliber and weight, they'll send up startup testing. And so we have to be ready to go because this is also in a production environment, right? Downtime on a press doesn't do well from a business perspective, right?
Yeah.
If we're not cranking that press up and down, we're not building bullets, we're not making money. And so it's fast-paced environment. We've got to be able to do, we're part quality control. We're doing visual inspections, dimensional inspections, a lot of record keeping, gun maintenance, barrel maintenance, cleaning, and then it's developing, accuracy loads, function loads. We shoot into the water tank at what we call a high end and a low end velocity for bullet expansion and weight retention. And that simulates an up close shot at a high velocity. And then we do a reduced velocity for a downrange shot, right? Velocity is loss over distance. And so we'll actually download a given cartridge to simulate a downrange shot, depending on the application, the cartridge and bullet weight. And we have specific requirements for bullet expansion and weight retention, within those parameters.
Okay.
And so lab tech's job is he's delivered samples, we load them up, we go and shoot them in the water tank, or we shoot them for accuracy, we shoot them for gel. On the ammo side, we're testing for pressure, velocity, function, and casualty, and accuracy as well. We also do a lot of development work in the ballistics lab. If you're a hand loader or a reloader, I'm sure you've referenced. We talked earlier about a reloading manual, online load data that BARNES puts out, reloading manuals that we put out. We develop all that data in the lab as well, so we're responsible for all that load development. We work on new product development. With R&D, say, okay, we're going to introduce a new bullet, whether it's going to be loaded into ammunition or offered as a component or sold to OEMs. We go through the testing and development of that. We look at the function criteria, the accuracy criteria. We test them for, all the above. We work on new product development for ammunition loads, selecting components, trying different propellants. We have very strict and specific design criteria we look at. Both from a safety and reliability standpoint. And so we'll work through that, all the way from initial hand load powder screening, all the way through experimental runs, design verification runs, trial and pilot runs, all the way to full production.
Okay.
And so it's kind of multi-purpose, multitask. It's I guess there's a lot of functions within the department, but it can be as engaging or as monotonous as you want it to be. Because at the end of the day, it's a lot of brass prep, powdering, priming, shooting in the water tank, shooting for accuracy. And, so it can be pretty involved, though. It's cool because you can learn so much, honestly. If you come at it with the right attitude, we've got a lot of good, trained, skilled guys here, long-term employees. And you can learn something new every day, though, whether you've been here 2 years or 15. There's a lot involved with ballistics and bullets and ammunition, so it's enjoyable.
Cool, man. Well, yeah. So how I kind of came to shooting barns was when I first started hunting out west, my first trip was actually, this is my second trip to Alaska. My buddy, who is ex-Navy Special Warfare, his name's Ned. He's been on the podcast. He helped me learn a ton about Western hunting and kind of get into it. And he's, being that he's ex-military and just his personality, he's like, super into ballistics and like a gun nerd and stuff. I think it's interesting. I know kind of enough to be dangerous, but I've said it before, but like the place I grew up hunting as a child, or the young person, whatever, it was a shotgun and bow only. So like I had no exposure to rifles at all. I mean, like, I'd shoot a 22 and stuff like that or whatever, but I knew nothing about rifles until like about 3 or 4 years ago. And I was so like naive. I was just like, oh yeah, it's just like, I knew nothing. I thought you just literally like threw on a scope, like just, cranked it down on there and zeroed it in. And like, I didn't know anything. And then like actually this deer right here on the wall behind me, I missed that deer 1 year because my weapon system was so crappy. Like after I shot and missed it, like I like jiggled my scope and it was like moving. Like I didn't even check if it was like screwed down tight. And I was like, all right, like I'm done with this. I got to figure this out. Like no more of these kind of misses. And so anyway, that was the beginning of my journey. And then my buddy we developed a load together for our Kodiak trip. and 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 got a really good load developed, and he turned me on to solid copper bullets. I loved the way they performed. I love the way they, I mean, almost every single animal I've shot with a solid copper bullet has just dropped. I've had a couple run like short distances and then drop. I've also, I was shooting out of that same rifle, which is a 6.5 Creedmoor. I shot another deer. I know this is just anecdotal, but I was shooting with a lead core bullet. It left almost no blood trail, and I did find the deer, but it was tough to find and it was pretty far away. Whereas almost every single thing I've shot with a copper bullet has just crumpled. And I even got from this year this guy. I know that you see these all the time probably, but
Yeah.
what's not focusing? There we go. That came out of that mule deer that's behind me on the wall. If you're listening, you should go to YouTube and check it out. I still got these perfectly mushroomed copper bullets, and then that came out of my antelope. It's not focusing, but anyway. So that being said, I couldn't really rely, especially as components with COVID started getting crazy. I couldn't rely on my buddy to like just be loading me enough ammo to keep me going, and he lived like 2 hours away. So I was like, I want to keep shooting solid copper, and I tried some different options, and the one that just really was performing the best was the Barnes 180 grain. I don't know, Vortex, I guess. I don't know what you guys call it, but it's this 180 grain solid copper ammo, and yeah, hunted with it all year. Took a bunch of nice animals, and been loving it. So that's kind of how I ended up with Barnes and with solid copper. But just past like kind of an anecdotal point of view, why did you guys decide to kind of go all in with the copper bullets, and what's kind of the thinking behind that, and as a ballistics guy?
Yeah, for sure. It started because Barnes, just kind of quick history. Barnes as a bullet company has been around, for however many years, 90 plus years. I think it is 80 something years. I don't even remember now. I'm trying to do the math in my head real quick, but
It's okay.
it started as Fred Barnes building heavy for caliber, solid copper jacketed, heavy pure lead core bullets. Kind of what we still offer in what we call the Barnes original line. The idea was deep penetration because of the thick copper jackets and the heavy for caliber, driving deep, having higher sectional density. And that's kind of where it lived, for a lot of years. I think that's all the way from the 1930s. And it kind of changed throughout those years, who owned it, what it was called, where it was, everything from, yeah, I mean, it was still a small company all around, no matter
Is it
what. But
primarily hunting bullets, or?
yeah, more on the hunting side, and that was everything from being built in somebody's garage or basement up to, somewhat functioning company. And it's pretty much where it lived until the 70s, when Randy and Connie Brooks purchased it and kind of started what Barnes is today. And it was in the 80s, when Randy Brooks, first developed the X bullet, and that's kind of what started the solid copper, the monolithic expanding hunting bullet. And the thought was, traditional conventional bullets are a lead core with a jacket, right? It's a jacketed, we call it
Mm-hmm.
a cup and core bullet. It's a drawing a cup, some sort of copper or gilding metal, and putting a lead core inside of it, forming it into a bullet shape. Um, Depending, and obviously you can get into the bonded bullets, and that, there's different ways about designing and manufacturing lead core bullets, and there's purposes behind all of them, and we build plenty of lead core bullets ourselves for certain applications. But the idea was, and I guess some of the drawbacks is one, lack of penetration,
Mm-hmm.
and weight retention. You know, especially on bigger game, you know, reaching the vitals or having an exit hole or being able to break through bone and reach, deep, whether it's quartering away or shots, it's not a perfectly broadside behind the shoulder shot on thin skinned game. Um, he had failures in the field on big game, brown bear, elk, those kind of things, where he
Yeah.
wanted to kind of remove that fault of jacket core separation, lack of penetration and weight retention. And so that's what drove him to a monolithic solid.
Yeah.
Obviously, the problem with a solid is you don't have any expansion, right? It's just going to drive a hole Generally, they're going to penetrate deep or straight line penetration, but without any expansion or mushrooming. You're not having any upset. It's not creating any wound cavity.
Right.
Just whatever permanent cavity is driven through the given diameter of whatever bullet caliber it is, right? And so by creating an internal cavity through what we would call an X punch, we've created, the ability to have an expanding solid is kind of how you can look at it. You get that expansion, that initial expansion and pop, and that frontal area to create that wound cavity. The four petals on a traditional X bullet, as it's rotating through, will cut and tear tissue and muscle and bone. And then with that mass behind it, because of high weight retention, it's going to drive deep, penetrate. And that's kind of the start of the X bullet and the thought behind the solid copper. And it's evolved over the years. We've added the relief grooves, the TSX grooves, cutting the grooves onto the shank to reduce bearing surface, relief pressure, reduce fouling, everything from that to the tipped versions with the TTSX, and then boat tails, higher BCs, longer ogives, with the LRX evolution of being able to go, kind of that long range hunting. That's kind of where at least in the West and elsewhere, but that's been the kind of the main focus the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
With technology of guns and scopes and rangefinders, that's kind of the drive and the demand of where it's gone. And so that's kind of where that solid copper bullet's gone. One of the advantages too is consistent performance. I can say we do a lot of testing here, not only with copper bullets, lead bullets, bullets we manufacture ourselves, but also competitor bullets. And one of the issues with lead core bullets, traditional just cup and core bullets, is consistent performance. We use our water tank I mentioned for function testing. Water's a really tough test. We have a good correlation of the water tank to ballistics gel to the field. And the water is a really good place. It works as a good test media. These are all hydraulic driven cavities. As fluid enters the cavity of a bullet, that's what creates that mushroom and that upset. Obviously, the higher impact velocity, the more impact and resistance it has, it's going to create that higher force. But lead core bullets, if we were to go fire, 20 bullets in the water tank at the same velocity, you could see everything depending on the bullet. I've seen everything from, complete jacket core separation to no expansion at all. And that's at the same bullet at the same velocity. There's just not a lot of consistency. And on top of that, at low velocity, a lot of those bullets are relying on yaw to have any form of upset. There's kind of a misunderstanding. Some people think that lead core bullets can expand better at low velocity. And in some ways that could be true depending on impact and tissue, but target media. But a lot of what that bullet's actually doing is when it enters the animal, it eventually yaws. It goes sideways. And then having that resistance, that frontal area, is what will actually cause that bullet to upset at that point. It's not necessarily being hydraulically driven to expand. It's relying on yaw to expand at low velocity, which can give inconsistent results, lack of penetration. And so the copper bullet, it's what we call a controlled expansion bullet. It has a function window. It's designed through cavity, ogive shape, internal, through different tooling. It has a given cavity design to expand within a function window. We have what we call our high end and our low end. And unfortunately, we can't just make that window, as large as we want. We don't have like two or 3,000 feet per second to work with here. A magic perfect bullet, that's impossible, physically impossible. There's too many issues in the way of whether it's material or tooling or design restrictions. We're more around that 1,000 to 1,500 feet per second window. Different designs, we can kind of move up or down depending on application, cartridge, launch velocity, intended usage. Some bullets are designed for, 0 to 100 yards or, 1 to 300 yards.
Right.
Some bullets are obviously designed more for 500, 600, 700 yards on hunting. And so we kind of look at the application and we put that function window in that velocity range to fit that cartridge or fit that application. And so we look for high weight retention, large expansion on the top end, and then we still want high weight retention and some expansion at the low end.
Okay.
That expansion is going to be linear with that velocity. As the velocity drops, the expansion is going to be less. So
Right.
if you recovered a Barnes bullet at 100 yards, the same bullet at 800 yards, obviously they're going to look different. You're going to have less
Sure.
expansion to low velocity. And that's kind of where that TTSX and LRX come into play. It's being able to have larger expanded diameters at low velocity. And with
Okay.
the higher BCs, you're actually retaining velocity and energy better downrange. So when you impact at, say, 600 or 700 yards, you're impacting at a higher velocity than a bullet like a TSX with a lower BC.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, this one that I was showing you earlier, I think that was like 180 yards, and the deer it was a frontal shot. Focus.
Mm-hmm.
So I found this like in the back. I think it was like in between the hide and muscle on like the back ham or something. And this was a
Yeah.
frontal shot too. Both animals died like pretty much instantaneously. Um, and also, I'm assuming that, I've always heard that like with a lead core bullet, you're gonna get tiny fragments and even like trace amounts of lead in your meat, and just like I've seen kind of a lot of meat loss when you hit like that shoulder, and it just kind of like it just turns into like jelly, like red jelly. I feel like there's less meat loss with the copper bullets and stuff too. But do you think that's true about like the small amounts of lead in the meat with lead core bullets and stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I've experienced that, and that's another advantage for sure. I mean, obviously, we're hunting a lot of us for meat. I we harvest our game, we process it ourselves, we cook it at home. My wife, my kids, we all love it, and so that's part of it. And not only meat loss, but nobody wants to bite into a steak and have
Dude,
a big chunk of lead or anything in there
I
too.
shot
So
I shot a whitetail with it was a 20 gauge shotgun slug, big huge piece of lead. And yeah, we were eating and my son was like, and he was a little kid. He was probably like 4. And we're like, dude, eat. And he's like, I can't. And we're like, just eat. And he's like, I can't. And I reached in his mouth. I pulled out a piece of lead like this big, dude. It was like a dime sized piece of lead. I was like, poor guy. Oh my gosh. And obviously that's a shotgun slug. I mean, it's a little different, but you got to think that stuff's going all the way through there, even in small amounts that you might not notice.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's an added benefit for sure. Is it good wounding with these bullets, good penetration, but yeah, it's going to be more minimal weight loss.
yeah.
Um, and you brought up, frontal shots, different angles. That's another advantage is we can't always pick our shot perfectly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the shot we're presented, um, you know, you don't always have time on your side. The animal could be heading to thick cover, or he's going to bolt off, and you got to make the decision: is this a good shot or not? And if you can have
Yeah.
confidence in that bullet to do its job, reach the vitals, penetrate through, whether that's broadside or frontal or quartering away or to you, that's
Mm-hmm.
another advantage. Is it's going to work no matter what. It's going to be able to drive through, tear stuff apart on its way, but it's also not, going in and just bombing out. It's not just completely coming apart like a varmint
Right.
bullet,
Just,
you know, and
yeah.
huge temporary cavity because lead core bullets, I mean, they can't. There's opportunity or there's advantages in certain shot placements, behind the shoulder, at a given velocity, perfectly broadside, they can work really well and they can also fail really well too.
Mm-hmm.
No
Yeah,
bullet is going to be perfect for every scenario.
for
There's
sure.
no magic bullet for every single application at every velocity range for every kind of game.
Yeah.
But you also don't want to use a lightly constructed, thin jacketed bullet for heavy game either. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's kind of the other side of it where people would say, well, you don't need a monolithic copper bullet to hunt antelope or whitetail or whatever. Which I'm not saying it's the only way you're going to kill an animal, but
Right.
you can also optimize these bullets because of that function window. You can make it very specific to a given cartridge. I look at examples like 350 Legend is a new one that we've developed a bullet for and an ammunition, and there is not a better performing bullet. I mean, accuracy, nothing even comes close to our bullet, that 170 grain. Terminal performance, from 1 to 300 yards, awesome expansion, good weight retention, good penetration, huge wound cavity. Nothing's coming close. It's not going to hit and just blow apart and not reach the vitals. Um, but it also expands really quick on thin skin game. 300 blackout or 110 grain TAC TX. That bullet is awesome. It pops right off the bat, huge cavity. We've shot gel at 300 yards out of a suppressed 9-inch gun, with 20 inches of penetration and huge cavity.
Wow.
I mentioned earlier the hunting antelope in Wyoming this past year. We've been working on some new stuff. I can't really go into details on, just some prototype bullets. And I was using some of those. I had them loaded in a 6.5 284. I went up there. My goal was to shoot an antelope at long range with my 6.5 284 with this prototype bullet. And I didn't ever get the right buck at the right distance. It just didn't ever present itself. So late in the hunt, my boy had killed, my wife had killed, my dad had killed. I was the last one, which was my goal. I wanted all them to make sure they were done first. And so it's kind of like, all right, I got to get this done. We can't make another trip up here. And I ended up finding a decent buck, but it was only like 150 yards away. And it was kind of like, this is fine, but it wasn't the shot I was looking for because hunting is awesome. And that's why I'm doing it. But at the same time with my job, it's like, well, there's always something new to try, some new bullet to test or cartridge. And so that was, there's an added objective to that hunt in bullet testing as well. And so anyways, I had my little 300 blackout. It's just a little Ruger American bolt gun suppressed with that 110 grain TAC TX. And this buck was just standing there 150 yards, this buck antelope, just frontal. And it's an antelope, they're not the toughest things to kill. They're pretty thin skinned, but still frontal shot, put it right in his chest. It took its down, and I'd recovered that bullet. Like you said, it was all the way penetrated clear through, and it was just in the ham on the off, just under the skin on the offside on that rear quarter. That's pretty awesome performance. Tore everything up in between.
Yeah.
Awesome expansion, good weight retention. And
those frontal shots can be very deadly. I don't know. I think some people are weirded out by it, but I mean, if you're confident and you're in the right range, I like them.
Yeah, and like I said, that's another benefit is having that confidence that you're going to still reach vitals. It's not just going to blow up on its chest. If it's an elk, you got a bull elk quartering away at 300-400 yards, and you're going to try to reach that offside shoulder, and you want it to penetrate through the vitals on the way, and you're putting it more or less in its guts on this side. That can end really bad if that bullet's just going to hit and blow apart, and it's only going to go 12 or 13 inches.
Exactly.
You're going to have a bad experience.
Yeah, and good segue, because I want to talk elk with you a little bit. So I was mentioning to you off air, but for folks listening, I drew a really cool elk tag. It's a muzzleloader tag. And one of the main reasons I wanted to talk to Gregg today was because I basically have a lot of work ahead of me to develop a load and get comfortable with a muzzleloader, which I currently do not even own a muzzleloader. I think I told Gregg I ordered one like today or yesterday. So it's gonna be fun. It's an extra little assignment on my plate, but I'm not complaining because that's a fun assignment. But I want to talk to you about muzzleloaders. I know you guys make some really great muzzleloader bullets. And so the state I'll be hunting is a no optic state, I guess you would say. So, I don't really see pushing past 100, 125 yards, probably max, I'm assuming, with a peep sight. But I want to talk to you about that and kind of where to start. You already gave me one really good tip, which was with that Blackhorn breech plug. And I know muzzleloading is its own kind of whole thing. So, and you know a lot about guns and stuff. So, let's just start from the beginning, man. Like if guys are wanting to get into muzzleloading, where, or even just, and we can just use me just because I need help anyway. Start with me. Like where do I start with developing a load and different charges? I know I'm gonna do a 209 primer. I'm gonna be shooting a CVA Acura in 50 cal. I'm using Blackhorn 209 powder. Other than that, we can start with bullets and then maybe talk about different charges and where to start and just your advice on that whole thing, man. I'd love to get into
Yeah.
it with you.
Yeah. So muzzleloading, you mentioned it is definitely its own thing. It's a guys can get into it. You can make it as complicated or simple as you want to.
Right.
I
And
try to keep.
just as a general thing, like just to frame the conversation, like I said, I want to be lethal and do justice to this hunt and to the animal, and but at the same time I'm not like a total like I have friends that like go like way hard, like hard, not there's nothing wrong with being really accurate at long ranges and stuff like that, but at the same time there's like a level past like what you actually need to be an effective hunter. I don't need to go into that. Like I want to be able to kill an elk in range and not be like I'm not like going out and doing PRS shoots or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, with the one place to start, I guess, is there are a lot of different regulations with muzzleloaders. You mentioned already you're hunting a state, the no optic state. I've done a lot of muzzleloader hunting myself in Utah, deer, elk. I've done some muzzleloader hunting in Texas on whitetail and hogs and some
Mm-hmm.
exotics. Anything goes down there pretty much,
Yeah.
where I was hunting
Yeah.
at least. Versus here, growing up, we could use what I'll call a modern muzzleloader, like an
Mm-hmm.
inline muzzleloader. But it was a no optic state at that time. Since then, it's now an optic state. So a lot of stuff's changed. But really start out with where are you going to hunt? You know, whether that's where you live or where you're traveling to. What are the regulations there? There's some states require specific projectiles. There's
Right.
limitations on that. Some states have primer limitations,
Yeah.
propellant limitations, optic limitations. And so, first, understand the regulations of where you're going to hunt and what gun you're going to use. Once you have that, we'll probably at this for this one, we're just going to assume, you know, from a gun perspective, we can use 209 primers, we can use, black corn powder, we can use modern, saboted muzzleloader bullets.
Yeah.
So with that being said, one of the challenges from a bullet manufacturer's perspective when it comes to muzzleloader bullets specifically is there's a lot of variation on the gun side
Mm.
with bore diameter, and all the Barnes muzzleloader bullets that we manufacture right now all use a sabot, a plastic sabot,
Mm-hmm.
to make full diameter. For example, our 50 caliber muzzleloader bullets, the bullet itself is a 451 diameter,
Okay.
0.451 inch, and the plastic sabot makes up the difference. So a couple things when you get that bore variation from gun to gun, manufacturer to manufacturer, you know, one guy it could load really easy. He can push it down his bore with his ramrod, no problem. There's enough resistance and kind of interference fit that it seals up and he doesn't have gas blow by or anything like that. And he gets good accuracy and it spins correctly and rotates and it's stable and we have good accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the next guy, he can't even get it down his bore. It's so tight.
Yeah.
He's beating his ramrod against a tree and
I've had one like that.
about to chuck his gun down the hill kind of thing. So there's everything in between. And so because of that, we've had to offer different options. And that's what kind of we have our original expander MZs in different diameters and weights. It we then went to the kind of the Spitfire TMZ, which is more modern tipped boat tail. It's the yellow sabot.
Okay.
One of the complaints with those, the bullet functions great, they're accurate, but in certain guns they were so tight to load.
Hmm.
Now if you have a loose bore gun, no problem, but some tighter bore guns, customers were having issues loading them, and so that led us to develop the TEZ for easy load, and that's the blue sabot. It's a flat base bullet. Honestly, the actual bullet itself, they're going to function the same. They're both tipped versions. They have 250, 290 grain offerings. They are a six pedal design, solid
Okay.
copper expanding. Um, Unlike our rifle bullets that are four pedal design, these are six pedal design, but they work a lot of the same way. High weight retention, um, good expansion, good temporary wound cavity, good permanent wound cavity, good penetration. Some of the competitor stuff in muzzleloader specifically, you get really poor weight retention,
Mm-hmm.
which leads to poor penetration. Even with some really heavy, some of these soft lead bullets, even just plated lead bullets, there's no even jacket on some of them. I mean, when they impact, they will flatten out like a pancake,
Yeah.
which depending on shot placement and distance, it might work in your favor, it might not. And
Right.
so we've always had good experience with ours across that, everywhere from 20 to 300 yards, depending on the application. Um, and so that TEZ helped them load easier. As muzzleloaders evolved, and you brought up the long range stuff, long range for a muzzleloader might be 200 yards. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so you want to make sure that bullet still expands at lower velocity. Your launch velocities are obviously going to be a lot lower on a muzzleloader shooting a 250 grain, 45 cal bullet versus your 30-06 with a 180 grain, right?
Right.
And so at 200 yards, you might only be going 1,000 feet per second. Is that bullet even going to expand at that velocity? And so these bullets are designed to expand within the reasonable ranges of a modern muzzleloader. But as different game laws have changed and consumer demands, and we've had different guns come out on the market. Years ago, the Remington Ultimate Muzzleloader kind of started it, where we're going like a super magnum muzzleloader. Guns that are built on actual rifle receivers that are built to withstand higher pressures.
Mm-hmm.
Those are rated to four 50 grain 777 pellets, 200
Wow.
grain charges.
Yeah.
They're looking at 2,400 feet per second muzzle velocity with the 250 grain.
Wow.
That made it a 300-yard muzzle loader.
Yeah.
And but one of the challenges is when we went to use our bullets in those types of guns, uh, because of the higher forces and higher spin and that much more powder being burned, it'll actually tear those plastic sabots apart, and so
Hmm.
you're getting poor accuracy. And so that led us to develop the Magnum MZ that we now offer. Same bullet as a TEZ, but with the green sabot that's a different material and different design to
Gotcha.
withstand those Magnum charges. And that's a good
Gotcha.
one. It's definitely required for something like a Remington Ultimate Muzzleloader is the Magnum MZ. But even, like say like your CVA Paramount now is kind of the same idea. It's a high velocity, higher charge. It's able to stand higher pressures. But I've even used them in just normal, like your CVA Acuras or, like TC Encores, where even with like a Magnum rated, like a traditional 150 grain charge by pellet, weight, uh, some of them work really well with the TEZs and the blue sabot, but some of them, accuracy wasn't as good, and we switch over to the TMZ with the green sabot, and that
Yeah.
sabot holds together better, and you get great accuracy and great performance.
Okay.
And
So
so
if
that's
you're gonna kind of be constrained to, I mean, let's just call it 150 yard. Two. I mean, we can say 200. There's no way I'm taking like an open sight 200 yard shot, but just for whatever, let's say we're constrained to inside 200 yards. I personally, some guys are like, let's throw as much powder in there as we can get, but you got a couple things in there too. You got, with all that recoil, you might be flinching a little bit more. Obviously, target acquisition or like, seeing the animal to see if you hit it or not after the shot. I don't know what the word is there, but and then also I've even heard like, at some of these super high powder charges, it might push the accuracy down a little bit because it's just too hot. So my friend who I keep referencing, he's helped me a little bit. He likes to go with like a super light. I think he was going with like a 90 grain charge, like a super light charge, knowing he's going to keep it in close range. But I don't know, where would you recommend starting as far as a powder charge if you are going in with no optic, knowing you're going to be pretty much close range shooting, and you want to do the job? And I don't want to be undergunned, but I want to kind of get the lightest charge I can get, I think, without sacrificing any performance.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I'll bring up to start with to keep in mind with muzzleloaders and powder propellant is when we talk about charge weights. It can get a little confusing because it's different from like a rifle hand loading. Everything in a reloading manual for rifles or even pistol handgun, any metallic centerfire cartridge is all done by weight. The recommended charges listed for a given propellant are weight. They'll have a minimum charge in grains and a maximum charge in grains. Muzzleloading gets a little more confusing because we start to throw in volumetric charges.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely something to bring up, is to pay attention if you're new to muzzleloading and you're referencing any sort of load data. Is that charge by weight, measured out weight on a scale, or is it by volume?
Right.
Whether you're using, and then we also throw in, say, a pelletized form of propellant. That's, we talked about keeping things simple. Pellets work good. There's a lot of different brands out there and different powder manufacturings offering muzzleloader propellants and some sort of black powder substitute. 777 is a good one to use. And I used pellets for a lot of years. Pyrex pellets back in the day,
Yeah.
with my old night disc rifle,
Yep. Me too.
open sights. Pellets work. They're simple. But as I got into it more and started really looking at accuracy, I switched over to the loose powder. I always tried to stay away from it in muzzleloading because, like, I don't want to deal with that out in the field. I don't
Yeah.
want to have this loose powder, but I realized that it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
You can have
You can
pre-measured,
pre-measure it. Yeah.
right? Yeah, pre-measured charge tubes that are just as
Yep.
easy to dump in as some pellets. But yeah, if I'm a guy starting out and I'm shooting pellets, and I'm not using one of these super magnum muzzle loaders, I'll probably start at just 100 grains, two pellets, 250 grain pellets, 100 grain, see where your accuracy is. Your velocity is going to be in range to shoot 100 to 150 yards. You don't want to go extreme and go throw a 150 grain pellet in there and not have any velocity. And, by the time you get to 150 yards, the bullet's not even going to do its job because there's no retained velocity left.
Right.
But you also don't need to shove 150 grain, 350 grain pellets just because your gun is rated for it.
Right.
Definitely try the 100. If I'm weighing them out with Blackhorn, you're probably going to be more in that like 70 to 80 grain range. I think by volume, I think their max is somewhere around 120 grains by volume.
Okay.
You'd have to reference the Western powder data with the Blackhorn 209, but Blackhorn's a great powder. Not every muzzleloader works with it. It's not compatible with every muzzleloader, depending on the breech and the design and the ignition source. You can run into issues, but if your gun is compatible and rated for use with like a Blackhorn 209 propellant, accuracy has been the best I've been able to find across the board. Velocity is great, low pressure, super consistent, low standard deviation, low extreme spreads on velocity. But yeah, with your Acura, definitely reference the load data from Blackhorn, whether you're doing a volumetric or by weight. But yeah, you don't have to go to that max charge, but keep it within reason too. You can get so wrapped around it as, like, if I'm a rifle hand loader and I look at like precision guys, whether it's PRS type guys or F class guys, target shooters, they can get down so many little rabbit holes of, thinking they have to find that exact node, as they want to call it, with doing ladder tests and all this craziness. Don't get caught up in that. You don't need to go try, 2 or 3 grain adjustments. I would probably go bigger steps, obviously referencing data, staying under a max charge, but maybe I'm going to try, 5 grain increments, try a group at, say, 70 grains, try a group at 75 grains, try a group at 80 grains, look at the accuracy difference. You mentioned recoil. You will definitely feel the difference. I personally shoot a Remington Ultimate muzzleloader the last couple of years, and they're recommended for 777 pellets. Like I mentioned, it's a super magnum, so it's 4 pellets. It's 200 grain rated.
Wow.
But I use Blackhorn in it, and so I'm using, I'm not using this as reference, don't hold me to it, but I use like 110 grains by weight of Blackhorn 209 in that because it's rated for the higher charge.
Right.
But if I go have my kid shoot a deer with it, like he did at 12 years old, there's a lot of recoil when you start pushing a 250 grain bullet 2,400 feet per second out of a muzzleloader.
Yeah.
And so I'm backing it off to more of that 90, 95 grain charge on that one.
Okay.
But yeah, that's, if I'm a guy starting it out, muzzleloading, maybe pellets are the way to start at first, just to keep it simple. Drop 250 grain pellets in, or 3 of them if it's a Magnum 150 grain rated, and try a group. Like I said, the TEZ, if you don't know what your bore is, I brought up there's a lot of variation in bore size. I would just play it safe and say shoot the TEZ.
Okay.
That way it's going to load easy. You're still going to have enough seal to have good accuracy and not any gas blow by. And if I'm a guy that I know I'm going to go to that 150 grain charge, like in pellet form, like a Magnum rated, or obviously with the Remington Ultimate type gun where you have to have, you're going to be hitting a high velocity, then the Magnum MZ is the way to go.
Yeah. Okay.
As long
Uh,
as it loads, I usually just go to that Magnum MZ now, even if I know I'm not going to be doing the highest charge. Outside of a little bit tighter to load than like a TEZ, that's usually my recommended go to.
okay. Um. All right. So okay, I'm going out to the range. I got my bullets. I got everything in place. Um. Let's say I'm gonna do. Let's say I'm gonna try out like 3 different charges. So I got like 100 grain, 110, 115, or whatever it is that I want to try out that day. What do you recommend as far as um, cleaning procedure, like in between shots and in between groups, to get the most consistent results that you can kind of rely on?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good question. It can definitely throw in a ton of variables. One, I mean, there's obviously the piece of keeping your gun in good working condition. You're not letting it get rusted or anything like that. Muzzle loaders can be filthy depending on propellant type used. You're going to have to keep them clean. Right off the bat, and I know a lot of guys are guilty of this, don't leave it loaded in the off
Mm-hmm.
season. Don't go store it in your closet, your gun safe with a charge left in because you didn't fire at the end of your deer hunt.
Yeah.
Definitely store it empty, store it cleaned and oiled. But you're going out to the range, cleaning procedure. Through a lot of experience and testing here, this is kind of what we've come up with. It's worked really well for us. The last couple of years, we've kind of dialed it in, and it's what I've used in my own muzzle loading. I'll start with clean gun. I'm going to go out and fire
All right.
2 caliber.
Question before you start there. Clean gun. Does that mean? Because I've heard both sides on this with center fire rifles. Um, Are you running dry patches after cleaning to make sure there's no I've even one of my friends even will do like acetone and then a dry patch to like make sure it's like no oil in the barrel. Where are you starting out? Are you starting is oil? Do you start with oil in there, or how do you do that?
Yeah. So what we use, any muzzleloader cleaner we use will work. But I'll definitely run a dry patch. What we use is brake cleaner, just like in an aerosol can. Spray some brake cleaner down it, run a dry patch. So yeah, that's what I mean by clean bore,
Okay.
and that's where I'm going to start.
Okay.
You know,
So you got a
I
clean
go
bore.
back. Yeah, I mean, I go back 20 years ago. I mentioned when I started with what I'll call a modern inline muzzleloader was a night disc, and I was literally like spitting on a patch and running it down the bore with a ramrod and
Yeah.
shooting Pyrex pellets. And I mean, it worked. I killed deer and whatever.
Yeah.
But clean bore, you're gonna go out there, shoot your first shot. Assuming you're already somewhat sighted in. You know, ig- Ignore the first shot. It's a fouling shot.
Okay.
I'm gonna shoot a second shot. Ignore the second shot. It's a fouling shot. Now I'm going to load and I'm going to shoot for record. I'll call it. I'm going to shoot a 3-shot group or a 5-shot group if you want to. It's a muzzleloader. I'm going to stick with 3 shots.
So you're not doing any cleaning after those first 2 shots.
No cleaning. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to shoot 2 shots and then I'm going to shoot my 3-shot group. With that 3-shot group, I'm going to look at shot placement versus point of aim. And I'm also going to look at dispersion, right? My group size.
Yeah.
Once I'm sighted in and I have my, point of aim where I want it, whether that's 100 yard zero or 2 inches high at 100 yards or whatever you have it, I'm going to repeat the process. I'm then going to clean it again. I'm going to obviously, shoot the 2 shots again. Then I'm going to shoot my 3 shots for record.
Okay. What are
That,
the first 2 shots doing?
they're fouling the bore. I've noticed with those shots, not always, but more often than not, they're going to be a flyer. They're going to be outside of the group. And if you start following those for scope adjustments or introducing those into your group for dispersion to say, okay, how good is it grouping? You're just adding in those variables.
Okay.
And I'm going to remove those out of it. And I'm going to hunt the same way. So if I'm shooting, it's right before my hunt.
You're gonna go with a dirty. You're gonna shoot it like before you load it to hunt, or what?
Yeah. So say it's day before the opener of your elk hunt. I'm going to travel out here with a clean gun. Day before the hunt, I'm going to go shoot 2 shots. I'm not going to pay that attention to if
Don't
there are
clean it
three.
at all.
Yep. I'm going to shoot the 2 shots from being clean. And at that point, I'm going to load it to go hunt the next morning. Or that morning, I'm going to wake up before I leave camp. I'm going to load it to go hunt. And I'm going to have confidence in that shot that's going to matter of where it's going to land.
Interesting. Okay. So I come to the range, clean gun, 2 shots, don't clean a thing. Then do my 3-shot group, no cleaning in between shots. And then I'm going to clean it.
Yep.
And when we say clean it, like thoroughly clean, like breech plug, barrel, like even till where you're getting a clean patch coming out, like very
Yeah.
clean.
That's what I do. That's what I do with my ultimate and
Okay.
Blackhorn. Now, obviously, somebody could have a process that works for them. You start throwing in different black powder substitutes and different gun makes, you're going to have variables. But at the end of the day, that's a system that's worked really well for us here in the
Okay.
lab. Now, this is
And
just muzzle loading,
of
right?
course, right. Muzzleloader specific. Um, so you're getting 5 shots between, and then you're cleaning, and then another 2 fouling shots, 3-shot group clean. Okay. And then that's kind of nice because then when I get out to my hunt area, I can sort of take 2 shots, semi practice, and like I said, there might be a flyer in there, but kind of get confident, make sure everything's at least clicking, and then go out there with my. See, that's. I'm glad I asked you because I would have thought to do that. And you're going out there with a gun. You'd never hunt with a gun unless you've shot it twice, and this is the 3rd shot.
That's what I've been doing the last couple of years.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time, and again, this is mostly around this Remington Ultimate muzzleloader, but I've used the same practice, the same protocol with a CVA Acura. My younger brother has a CVA Acura. That's what he uses. My dad shoots a TC Encore muzzleloader. I've done the same practice with those. It's worked well for us to
Okay.
remove some of those variables out. I used to back in the day. I had a clean gun. That's where I started my hunt. Clean gun, and I would go shoot a cap. I'd shoot a primer because if I didn't, generally I'm going to have a misfire or a hang fire. Just to get any oil or residue left out of
Mm-hmm.
that nipple and the breech plug. And then I would load it to go hunt. And that worked, with my night disc back in the day, good enough to hunt. And I guess I can reel it back to put it in perspective, right? Like, at least in my experience with muzzleloaders, I grew up hunting open sights. That was the regulation
Yeah.
in Utah was open sights only. So it was a little simpler. It was like, well, can I hit a, vital size target at 100 yards? I'm good to go. Nobody's that capable, generally speaking, to really get that dialed in with open sights with a muzzleloader at 100 yards. You got to keep it from a practical perspective.
For sure.
What is acceptable accuracy? If I'm
Mm-hmm.
keeping 3 shots in a vital size target with open sights at 100 yards, I'm calling it good. So this is taking it a little to the extreme, but this is also now we throw scopes on it. All of a sudden it's like, oh crap, my muzzleloader sucks. How did I ever kill anything all these years?
Yeah.
Kind of perspective, but that's what's worked for us. And I've just
Yeah.
followed that practice the last little bit with regardless of muzzleloader type. So,
Yeah. Because like I said, I'm glad I talked to you about it. Because yeah, I mean, I've talked to guys that are like cleaning between every single shot, and that stresses me out. I like your method better.
yeah. And there's a lot of guys that do that. They'll at least run like a spit patch between each shot. That's what I used to do on my night way back when. But that's what I've gone to now. And the Blackhorn is cleaner too, right? It's less residue left. It's less fouling.
Mm-hmm.
And so with your Blackhorn 209 propellant, I think that system will work good for you.
Yeah. Because I remember back in the day with my night disc rifle I used to have. I mean, you shot 3 shots through that thing. Your breech plug might be completely clogged, or it might be like almost impossible to get a bullet back in. Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And you will notice a little bit tougher load force, on shot number 3 than shot number 1.
right.
But in my experience, the grouping that has been there, and I've been able to still load shot number 3, and then I'm going to clean again and just repeat the process.
Cool. All right. Cool, man. Well, that is a pretty good start. I might, at some point maybe have you back on. We can like dive deeper into stuff like ballistically and kind of nerd out a little bit. But I think that was a good place to start, um, and we're coming up on the time here. So I don't know. Anything else you wanted to like just add, like kind of in closing?
I appreciate you having me on. Like I said, I hopefully we covered some things that people find informative
Yeah,
and interesting, if nothing else. But it's I just love working here. It's good
yeah,
company. I guess that's all I'll add. It can be a job like any other, no
sure.
doubt. But it's a good company. There's a lot of passionate people here
Yeah,
that they love hunting, they love bullets, they believe in the product, and that's what we try to do every day is put out product that the end user is going to be satisfied in. So
100%. And like I said, I've been super satisfied with my barn stuff, and it wasn't like hey, let me go find a ammo sponsor. It was like, hey, I need to find some ammo that works for me that I like. And then and then I shot it all year, and it was performed great. Then I went and came and approached you guys. So, and I've had a great experience with everybody I've talked to over there, and I'm proud to be partnered with you guys.
awesome. No, we look forward to it.
Yeah, man. All right, cool. Well, let's just call it there, and then, like I said, maybe I'll have you back on sometime. We'll kind of nerd out a little bit, but I think this is a good place to start, especially on the muzzleloader side.
Cool. No, that works. Thank you.
All right, man. Thanks again.